This lane is for Diamond Medallion and First Class. Economy check-in is at the far end. Step back, please." The words came out flat. Practiced. Final. The voice of someone who had said them 100 times to 100 people who looked exactly like her. Dana Pruitt did not look at the boarding pass. She looked at the woman holding it. She looked at the messy bun, the no-makeup exhaustion, the charcoal hoodie, the clean white sneakers. She made a calculation in less than 3 seconds. And she got it completely wrong. What Dana did not see was the Rolex date just peeking out from under the left sleeve of that hoodie. What she did not see was the worn leather duffel that cost more than her monthly rent. What she did not see was the stillness in the woman's eyes. Not the stillness of someone uncertain, but the stillness of someone who had already decided how this would end. What Dana Pruitt did not know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 11 hours, the woman she had just dismissed would not be filing a complaint. She would be filing a market position. And by the time the sun rose over Chicago the following morning, Meridian Sky Airlines would be in the process of ceasing to exist. Before we get into how that happened, I need to ask you something. Have you ever been dismissed before anyone even knew your name? Have you ever been looked through instead of looked at? Have you ever stood in a room where the person in front of you had already decided who you were before you opened your mouth? Comment below. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if you have felt that invisible wall go up. The one that has nothing to do with what you have done and everything to do with what you look like. Because the woman in this story knew that feeling better than most. And she had spent 20 years deciding exactly what to do about it. If this story stops you in your tracks, and it will, hit that subscribe button now and give this video a like. Because what happens next is the kind of justice that most people only dream about. And you do not want to miss a single word. Now, let's rewind to how this all started. Her name was Dr. Naomi Graves, 41 years old, senior partner at Graves & Holloway, LLP, one of the most respected corporate liability firms in the country. She specialized in 2 things: dismantling the legal defenses of corporations that thought they were untouchable and acquiring distressed assets, failing companies, broken institutions, businesses that had been run into the ground by the people who were supposed to protect them. She was very good at her job. That Tuesday morning, Naomi walked into Terminal 3 at O'Hare International Airport carrying nothing but a worn leather duffel and a slim tablet case. No assistant trailing behind her. No designer logo on the bag. No jewelry except the watch. Just the kind of quiet that settles into a person who has nothing left to prove and everything left to do. She had been in Frankfurt for 4 days. A hostile takeover negotiation. A tech conglomerate valued at $3.4 billion. She had been the one across the table that made the other side blink first. She always was. She flew private when she could. The firm's Gulfstream was faster, quieter, and blessedly free of the particular kind of theater that commercial air travel had become, but a storm system over the Atlantic had grounded corporate jets from Chicago to Munich. She had no choice. Meridian Sky Airlines. Flight 318, direct to New York, departing at 10:15 a.m. Seat 1A, first class. She had paid $5,400 for the privilege. She walked toward Gate E14. The terminal hummed around her. Business travelers dragging roller bags. Families managing strollers and snacks. The particular brand of fluorescent exhaustion that lives inside every airport on Earth. Naomi moved through it all with the economy of someone who had made this walk 1,000 times. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no performance. She saw the gate from 50 feet away. Zone 1 boarding had already been announced. A short line of 4 people waited at the scanner. She joined it. That was when she saw Dana Pruitt. Dana was 44, blonde bob, aggressively starched uniform, and a customer service smile she appeared to reserve exclusively for passengers who met her expectations. She stood at the scanner with the particular energy of someone who enjoyed the small power of their position more than they should. Naomi stepped forward when the line moved. She was reaching into her bag for her boarding pass when Dana's hand shot out. Palm flat, horizontal, a barrier. "Ma'am, this lane is for Diamond Medallion and First Class. Economy check-in is at the far end. Step back, please." Naomi stopped. She looked at Dana's hand. Then she looked at Dana's face. "I know," Naomi said. "I'm in 1A. Dana let out a short breath. Not quite a sigh, not quite a laugh. The kind of sound adults make when dealing with children who insist they know something they clearly do not. "Ma'am, please do not make a scene. Zone 1 is for first-class passengers. Check your ticket. You are likely Zone 4 or 5. Naomi did not raise her voice. She did not shift her weight. She simply extended her hand and offered the boarding pass QR code facing up. "Scan it," she said. The use of her own instruction issued without permission to the agent made Dana's jaw tighten. She took the pass, pressed it to the scanner. The scanner beeped green. Graves N. Seat 1A, First Class. Priority boarding. Donna stared at the screen for 2 full seconds. Then she looked back at Naomi. There was no apology, no adjustment, just a narrowing of the eyes, a recalibration not of her judgment but of her strategy. "Passport," Dana said, though she had already checked it minutes earlier during the initial document verification. Naomi handed it over. Dana flipped through it with the aggressive energy of someone searching for a mistake she was entitled to find. She looked at the photo. She looked at Naomi. She looked at the photo again. Then she shoved the documents back across the counter like they had offended her personally. She looked past Naomi. Her entire posture changed, shoulders dropping, smile appearing, voice warming by several degrees. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Fowler," Dana said to the white man in a gray suit standing directly behind Naomi. "So wonderful to have you with us again." Naomi picked up her documents. She did not react. She had learned long ago that reacting was a gift she would never give people like Dana Pruitt. She walked toward the jet bridge. The temperature dropped slightly as she moved into the corridor, the hollow echo of her footsteps the only sound around her. With her right hand, she reached into her pocket and typed a text message without looking at the screen. She had the message memorized. She had typed a version of it many times before. It said, "Sienna. It's starting." The reply came back in under 4 seconds. "Ready." Naomi kept walking. She did not slow down, did not look back, did not give the gate a second glance. Ahead of her, the mouth of the aircraft waited. A pressurized metal tube that one airline had decided she was too much of an inconvenience to board without a fight. They had no idea what they had just started. The first-class cabin of Meridian Sky Flight 318 was everything economy was not. Soft blue LED lighting ran along the overhead panels. Jazz played at a volume just above a whisper. The seats were wide, cream-colored pods with lie-flat capability and small privacy dividers that gave each passenger the illusion of their own universe. Naomi found seat 1A without assistance. She lifted her duffel into the overhead compartment, settled into the seat, leaned her head back, and closed her eyes. 6 hours of sleep. That was all she wanted. 6 hours of ginger ale and silence. She got 12 seconds of it. "Excuse me." The voice was nasal, too loud for the environment, and calibrated to carry. Naomi opened one eye. Standing in the aisle over her seat was a man in a flight attendant uniform. His name badge read, Troy Callahan. He was 38, with hair gelled back from his forehead with architectural precision and a smile that existed in the same way a traffic cone existed, not to welcome, but to redirect. He was holding a manifest clipboard in front of him like a man preparing to cite violations. "Can I help you?" Naomi asked. I think there has been some confusion, Troy said. His volume was set precisely high enough that the businessman in seat 1B, Arthur Blythe, 52 silver-templed Wall Street Journal open across his lap, looked up over the top of his reading glasses. This is the first-class cabin. Economy begins past the galley row 10 and back. Naomi sat up a half-inch. I am aware, she said. This is my seat. 1A. Troy chuckled. It was a specific kind of chuckle, the kind designed to make the other person feel they had said something slightly ridiculous. Let me see your boarding pass, please. For the second time in 15 minutes, Naomi had to prove she existed in the correct place. She pulled up the digital boarding pass on her phone and held it out without comment. Troy leaned in. He squinted at the screen with the focused energy of someone hoping to find a technical error. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly when he found none. It says 1A, he admitted, like the information had personally disappointed him. But we have a discrepancy in the manifest. I am going to need you to take your bag and step into the galley so we can sort this out. Sort what out? Naomi asked. Her voice had shifted, not louder but harder. The way a diamond is harder than the thing trying to cut it. I have a ticket. I am seated. The forward door is still open. If there is a discrepancy, your system is right there. I am not moving. Troy's posture changed. His smile disappeared. His voice dropped an octave into a register Naomi recognized immediately. The register of institutional authority, the voice that says I represent something larger than you, and I am exercising it now. Ma'am, I need you to lower your voice. You are creating a disturbance for the other passengers. Naomi looked around the cabin. It was barely a quarter full. The nearest passengers were several rows back. Arthur Blythe in 1B was staring at the same paragraph he had been pretending to read for the last 90 seconds. In seat 2, a woman in her early 60s, Sandra Good, reading a paperback novel, had set the book face down on her knee. I have not raised my voice above a conversational level, Naomi said clearly and without heat, and I am not moving from a seat I paid for. If there is a legitimate discrepancy, resolve it here. Troy stiffened. He turned slightly toward the galley and made a small gesture with 2 fingers. Carmen Vidal appeared from the galley entrance. 34 years old, dark hair pulled back 6 years flying with meridian sky. She was the junior flight attendant on this route, and she moved with the cautious efficiency of someone who had learned to read a room quickly. Troy gestured at the manifest tablet in Carmen's hands. Show her. Carmen looked down at the screen. Her eyes moved across it. Then they moved to Naomi's face, then back to the screen. Yet something crossed Carmen's expression in that moment, a flicker of something complicated. It was not agreement. It was not indifference. It was the particular discomfort of a person who can see exactly what is happening and has not yet decided what to do about it. Troy read her hesitation and cut across it. Step back. Carmen, he said quietly. I've got this. Carmen stepped back. But she did not return to the galley. In seat 3, a young man named Felix Reyes had been watching since Naomi sat down. Felix was 29 years old with a travel vlog channel that had recently crossed 800,000 subscribers. He filmed airports, hotels, airline experiences, the good and the ugly without apology. He had filmed Dana at the gate from a distance, something about the interaction catching his instinct before his brain had processed why. Now, watching Troy Callahan stand over a seated woman who had done nothing but exist in a seat she had purchased, Felix made a quiet decision. He opened his camera app. He pressed record. He did not announce it. He simply tilted his phone at the angle that caught the most of the aisle and let it run. Something's wrong here, he whispered toward his mic, barely audible, and I am not going to look away. back at seat 1. A Troy was recalibrating. He had tried authority. She had not moved. He had tried volume. She had not flinched. He had tried the implication of procedural failure. She had met it with precision. So he tried something else. He took one step forward, then another. He planted himself squarely in the aisle beside her seat, turned his body sideways, and extended both arms, one toward the forward bulkhead, one toward the seats behind, creating a physical wall of presence. He did not touch her. He did not need to. The message was the same. He was blocking her in. Several passengers saw it at once. Felix zoomed in. "He just blocked her in," he whispered. Both arms. In front of the whole cabin. In seat 2. Sandra Good put her paperback down entirely. Carmen Vidal, standing at the galley entrance, looked at Troy's outstretched arms. She looked at Naomi, who had not moved a single muscle. A very specific kind of discomfort settled over Carmen's face, the kind that comes not from confusion but from clarity. She knew exactly what she was looking at. She swallowed, and she stayed where she was. Troy looked down at Naomi. His voice was quieter now, lower, with the particular intimacy of a threat that does not want an audience, even as it makes one. "I am going to get the captain," he said, "and when he comes out here, this stops being a customer service issue." "Do you understand what I am saying?" Naomi looked up at him. Her expression was the same as it had been since she boarded, unreadable, unmoved. The expression of someone running a calculation that the person looking at them cannot see. "I understand exactly what you're saying," she said. "Go get him." Troy lowered his arms, turned, walked toward the cockpit with the focused stride of a man who was certain he was about to win. The cabin exhaled. Sandra Good leaned slightly forward in 2A. "Young man," she said, loud enough for the surrounding rows to hear, directed at Troy's retreating back. She has been nothing but polite since she sat down. "Why are you doing this?" Troy did not answer. The cockpit door swallowed him. Naomi reached for her phone. She typed quickly, precisely, eyes moving between the screen and the cockpit door. "Flight 318, FA, Troy Callahan, Captain Douglas Harmon, Gate Agent Dana Pruitt. I need full background on all three. I also need Meridian Sky's complete financial position, current debt load, pending transactions, any merger or acquisition activity, regulatory history. Run everything. I need it in 20 minutes. She paused. Then she added one more line. "And airdrop the following address to every phone in first class. Tell them if they are recording what is happening here, send the footage to this address. Tell them their identity will be protected." She typed the address, justiceair.tipline. She hit send. Sienna Okafor was 36 years old and had been Naomi's investigator for 7 years. She operated from a home office in Silver Spring, Maryland, with 4 monitors and a secure server that would make most intelligence contractors envious. She had helped Naomi build cases against 3 Fortune 500 companies, 2 government contractors, and 1 pharmaceutical company that had spent 12 years believing it was above accountability. Sienna did not ask questions. She did not express surprise. She simply replied, "On it." Airdrop deploying in 60 seconds. 58 seconds later, Arthur Blythe's phone vibrated in his jacket pocket. He glanced at it. "Airdrop request from an unknown sender." He opened the attached message. "You are witnessing a civil rights violation in real time. This tip line is encrypted and secure. Your identity will be completely protected. If you have footage, send it. If you do not, start recording." Arthur Blythe looked up from his phone. He looked at seat 1A. He looked at the empty aisle where Troy had stood. He looked at the cockpit door. Then Arthur Blythe, who for the past 12 minutes had been pretending to read the same paragraph of the Wall Street Journal, accepted the airdrop and opened his camera. In seat 2, Sandra Good felt her phone buzz. She squinted at the screen. "Read the message twice." looked at Naomi, who was sitting perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap, eyes forward expression calm. Sandra turned on her camera. In 3C, Felix Reyes watched the cabin around him shift. He watched phones come out in quiet succession, one after another, like lights turning on in a darkened building. His mouth opened slightly. "Oh, wow," he whispered. "She just turned the whole cabin into witnesses." The air in the cabin changed in that moment. It was not tense exactly. It was more like a collective decision had been made. Quiet, invisible, distributed across 15 people sitting in cream-colored seats. No one was going to look away anymore. No one was going to pretend. They were all watching now, and the captain had not even come out yet. The cockpit door opened at 10:04 a.m. Captain Douglas Harmon walked into the first-class cabin with the particular gait of a man who had never once questioned whether a room belonged to him. 57 years old. Silver hair, square jaw, 4 stripes on each shoulder, a build that still suggested the Air Force career that preceded his commercial one. He did not enter with curiosity. He did not enter with concern. He entered the way people enter a situation they intend to close. Troy Callahan trailed 3 steps behind him with the energy of a schoolyard informant waiting to see what the principal does next. Harmon stopped at the front of the cabin. He did not look at Naomi. He looked at the space directly above her head, a technique she recognized immediately. It was the technique of someone who wants to establish dominance without engaging, who wants to exercise authority without the inconvenience of eye contact. "Miss," he said. "Not doctor, not ma'am. Miss, you have been asked by my crew to step out to the galley. I am telling you the same. This is my aircraft." "My name is Dr. Graves," Naomi said. Her voice had not changed. Not louder, not harder, just precise like a correction on a legal document. "And I have not been given a legitimate reason to vacate a seat I purchased." Harmon's chin came down slightly. His posture adjusted in a way that communicated he was not accustomed to corrections from passengers, particularly from passengers in hoodies. "We have a weight and balance adjustment on this flight," he said. "We need this specific seat for a crew member repositioning to New York. Standard protocol. You will be moved to economy with full compensation for the difference in fare." The cabin went absolutely silent. Not the polite ambient silence of people trying not to eavesdrop. The held breath silence of people who have just heard something they cannot believe was said out loud. Naomi looked at Harmon for 3 full seconds. When she spoke, her voice carried the particular chill of someone who does not need to raise it to fill a room. "Captain Harmon," she said, "you and I both know that relocating a 130-pound woman 20 rows toward the rear does not materially alter the aerodynamics or weight distribution of a Boeing 737 MAX. And under federal aviation passenger protection regulations, an airline cannot involuntarily downgrade a revenue passenger to accommodate a non-revenue positioning crew member, not without volunteer consent, which I am not giving." In seat 3C, Felix Reyes forgot he was trying to be subtle. He stared openly, phone-steady mouth barely moving. "She just cited federal aviation law," he whispered. On the spot, no notes, without blinking. In seat 1B, Arthur Blythe had completely abandoned any pretense of reading. His paper was folded on his knee, his phone recording in his left hand, and he was looking between Harmon and Naomi with the expression of a man watching something he will be talking about for the rest of his life. Harmon's face had changed. The performed calm was still there barely, but underneath it something had shifted. He was not used to being cited regulations. He was not used to someone knowing more about his job than he had assumed they would. He was especially not used to it from someone who looked like Naomi Graves on a Tuesday morning. He took a step forward. Then another. He stopped close enough that Naomi would have to look up to meet his eyes. a calculated positioning, the physical language of a person trying to shrink another person without touching them. "I do not know what you think this is," he said, his voice dropping. "But this is my aircraft under federal authority. If you continue to refuse crew instructions, I will have you removed by port authority before this aircraft pushes back. And when that happens, I will personally submit your name to the National No-Fly Registry. You will never board a commercial aircraft again. Do you hear me?" Never. The threat hung in the cabin air like something toxic. No one moved. No one spoke. The phones kept recording. Sandra Good pressed her lips together so tightly they went white. Arthur Blythe exhaled through his nose. Carmen Vidal, standing at the galley entrance, looked at the floor. And then something happened that no one in that cabin expected. The threat reached Naomi Graves, and instead of frightening her, it sent her somewhere else entirely. She was 27 years old again. Washington, D.C., January. The kind of cold that gets inside your coat. She had taken the metro from her apartment to the offices of Callister, Webb & Horn, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the capital. She had been there for 4 months. She had the highest bar exam score in her cohort. She had already won 4 cases. She had spent 3 nights writing a litigation memo that her supervising partner had described in an email to a colleague she was not supposed to see as the most thorough junior work this firm has produced in 5 years. She had dressed carefully that morning. Black suit, white blouse, the good earrings. She had rehearsed the meeting in her head during the entire 40-minute train ride. She knocked on the senior partner's door. He told her to come in. She came in. He looked at her from across his mahogany desk. The look lasted about 2 seconds. It was the kind of look that does its damage in less time than it takes to blink. "Is Marcus not available?" he said. Marcus was the associate 2 years her junior, who wore better suits and whose father had gone to Georgetown Law. That was who the partner asked for. Naomi had stood in that doorway for 4 seconds. She felt the floor shift slightly beneath her, the way it does when you realize a room has walls you could not see from outside. Then she walked to his desk, set the memo down in front of him without a word, and left. He read it. He did not apologize. But 3 months later, she was assigned the Hartfield case, the largest file in the firm that year. When it settled, her name was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal's business section. She had gone home the night of that doorway and opened her laptop. Not to cry, not to call anyone. She had opened a document and started writing the outline of the firm she would eventually build. The one that would one day handle deals larger than anything Callister, Webb & Horn had ever touched. The shame of that doorway had never disappeared. But she had learned something important about shame. It was extremely flammable, and she had been burning it as fuel for 14 years. Now, standing in seat 1A of a plane she had paid more than $5,000 to board, she felt the same floor shift beneath her, the same wall appearing, the same look, dressed differently, wearing a uniform this time, but fundamentally identical. The look that had underestimated her for 14 years straight. And in 14 years that look had never once been right. Naomi reached up and unclipped her seatbelt. She stood. At 5 feet 6 inches, she did not physically tower over anyone. But there is a quality some people carry when they stand, a density of presence, a gravitational weight, that has nothing to do with height. The cabin felt it. Several passengers shifted in their seats without knowing why. She reached into the overhead compartment and pulled her duffel down. She settled it over one shoulder. She turned to face Captain Harmon directly. She looked at him with the unhurried attention of someone who has already seen how this ends. "I am leaving," she said. "Not because you have the legal right to remove me. You do not. I am leaving because I will not allow this situation to escalate in a way that lets you characterize me as the disruption. But hear me clearly, Captain Harmon. This is the worst professional decision you will ever make, and you have absolutely no idea who I am." Harmon's expression did not shift. He had heard variations of this sentence before from passengers who were angry, embarrassed, or some combination of both. They all walked off the plane. They all filed a complaint that went into a folder that went into a filing system that went nowhere. "I do not care who you are," he said. "You are a problem. Get off my plane." Naomi reached into her pocket with her free hand. She held her phone up. The screen was facing outward toward the cabin. On it was a recording timer. It read 7 minutes 14 seconds. She turned slowly to address the cabin. "Not performing, just clear. My name is Dr. Naomi Graves. If anyone here is recording what you have witnessed, please send your footage to the address that was airdropped to you. Your identity will be fully protected. Thank you for not looking away." She found Felix Reyes in seat 3C. He gave her one small, deliberate nod. She walked, head level, shoulders square, sneakers making no sound on the cabin floor. She moved through the first-class aisle as if she were leaving a meeting that had ended on her schedule, not theirs. Behind her, Troy Callahan let out a long breath, a sound of victory so audible that Arthur Blythe's jaw tightened visibly. In seat 2, Cassandra Good watched Naomi walk to the door. Her phone was still recording. Her hand was steady, but her voice when it came was not. "That was wrong," Sandra said. "To no one. To everyone. What they just did to her. That was deeply, plainly wrong. No one in the cabin contradicted her." Carmen Vidal stood at the galley entrance and watched the door close. She had not spoken. She had not stepped forward. She had stood in the exact middle of a line she needed to choose a side of, and she had not chosen. She would spend the next 4 hours thinking about that. The jet bridge echoed as Naomi walked back up it. Cool air hit her face. Her heart was beating faster than her face showed. That was always the way. The outside was a system she had spent 20 years engineering. The inside was something else. Something hot and old and extremely familiar. She did not slow down. Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was Sienna. She read the message. Then she read it again. She stopped walking, stood still in the middle of the jet bridge while the world moved around her. A slow breath in, a slow breath out. A smile appeared on her face. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who has just been handed exactly what they need. She kept walking, toward the terminal, toward a corner table and an open laptop and 11 hours that would change everything. Naomi did not go to the Meridian Sky customer service counter. She did not ask for a supervisor. She did not request a refund, a voucher, a rebooked flight, or an apology. She did none of the things that airlines count on passengers doing, because those are the things that go nowhere. She walked directly from Gate E14 to the United Club Lounge on the opposite side of Terminal 3. She chose it specifically because it had no Meridian Sky branding, no Meridian Sky staff, and no possibility of being interrupted by someone wearing a Meridian Sky uniform with a customer relations script and a hollow offer of goodwill miles. She found a table in the far corner, window seat overlooking the tarmac. She sat down, opened her laptop, and typed 4 words to Sienna Okafor. "Full audit. Begin now." Then she ordered a ginger ale from the passing server, set her phone face up on the table beside the laptop, and waited. Outside the window, the tarmac moved with the organized choreography of an airport at work. Fuel trucks, luggage carts, ground crews in orange vests, and taxiing slowly toward runway 32L, the blue and silver livery of Meridian Sky Flight 318, pulling away from the gate like nothing had happened. Naomi watched it without expression, the way you watch a piece on a board move into position. 18 minutes later, Sienna called on video. Sienna Okafor was lean, precise, and wore the permanent expression of someone who had just found something they were not supposed to find. She pushed her reading glasses up and looked at Naomi through the screen. Meridian Sky Airlines, she said. Here is what they absolutely do not want anyone knowing. She spoke quickly. No preamble, no softening. The airline was bleeding. Operationally, they were carrying $2.3 billion in debt against a revenue base that had contracted 18% since the previous fiscal year. Fuel costs, labor disputes, and a catastrophic quarter in transatlantic bookings had accelerated what had already been a slow, quiet decline. They were not the kind of failing that made headlines. They were the kind of failing that got papered over with optimistic press releases and careful accounting until it could not be papered over anymore. The merger with Pinnacle Group Aviation was the only thing keeping them standing. Pinnacle was acquiring Meridian Sky's international route portfolio, their gate access at 6 major hub airports, and their fleet of newer aircraft. The deal was structured to close at a board vote on Wednesday, 6 days away. The agreed acquisition price was contingent on Meridian Sky's stock price remaining above $38 per share through the closing date. CEO Maxwell Dorn had personally guaranteed this through a series of financial commitments that left him with no margin for error. His compensation package, his personal investment accounts, the Scottsdale estate, the Lake Michigan property, all of it was tied to the deal going through cleanly. Then Sienna said, "There is something else, and this part is more serious." Naomi said nothing. She waited. Meridian Sky had been deferring mandatory maintenance on 9 Boeing 737 aircraft in their older fleet. Not minor deferrals, major ones. Engine inspection cycles that federal aviation regulations required to be completed at specific flight hour thresholds. The airline had reclassified these costs as long-term capital improvements in their financial filings, hiding the expense from their quarterly earnings reports to keep their numbers clean enough for the merger due diligence. In plain language, they had been flying planes that should have been grounded, and they had been filing paperwork that said otherwise. If the FAA found out their operating certificate was at risk, if Pinnacle Group found out the merger died within hours. And Sienna said, her voice dropping slightly, "Captain Douglas Harmon is not a clean story either. I found 3 formal complaints in his personnel file from the past 4 years. 2 of them involved solo female passengers of color who claimed they were unlawfully removed from flights based on profiling. Both complaints were reviewed internally. Both were dismissed. The reviewing officer on both cases was a senior VP of operations at Meridian Sky, whose brother-in-law is Douglas Harmon." Naomi picked up her ginger ale. "Set it down without drinking. How far do you want to take this?" Sienna asked. Naomi looked out the window. Flight 318 was a small silver shape now turning onto the runway, growing smaller. She thought about Dana at the gate with her arm extended. She thought about Troy standing over her seat with his arms spread wide, making a wall of himself. She thought about Harmon and the words "never board a commercial aircraft again," said in the voice of a man who believed in the permanence of his power. She thought about a senior partner's mahogany desk, a memo she had written for 3 nights, a door that had never opened. "As far as it needs to go," she said. She opened her brokerage account on her laptop. The interface loaded without fanfare, a dashboard of numbers and position data that Naomi moved through with practiced ease. She searched the ticker MSA Meridian Sky Airlines. Current share price $41.20. She did not buy shares. Buying shares was a bet that a company would grow. Naomi was not making that bet. She moved to the options market. She purchased put options, contracts that would pay out in inverse proportion to how far the stock price fell. For anyone unfamiliar with how this works, the short version is this: she was betting with real money that Meridian Sky Airlines was about to destroy itself, and she intended to profit from every single dollar it fell. She placed the order. $2,800,000. She hit confirm. She looked at the number on the screen for 1 moment. Then she looked away. "Sienna," she said, "get the video ready. Remove any metadata that could trace the upload location. I want it live at 6 a.m. Tomorrow. Copy that, Sienna said. What about a caption? Naomi thought about it for 3 seconds. Tag Maxwell Dorn. Directly, she said. And title it, What Meridian Sky Airlines Does to Black Women in First Class. Let it speak for itself. She closed the brokerage window and opened her email. There was something she needed to draft. Something that required her name, her credentials, and her willingness to be identified. She had been anonymous long enough for that part of the strategy. Tomorrow she would stop being invisible. At 6 o'clock the following morning, while Naomi was sitting in the same hotel room she had checked into the night before, a suite at the O'Hare Marriott with a clear runway view and room service she had not touched. The video went live. It was not posted from her personal account. It was uploaded from a secure account Sienna had created specifically for this purpose, then simultaneously sent to 4 Reddit communities with large aviation and social justice followings, forwarded to 3 investigative journalists, whose contact information Naomi had saved over years of work, and cross-posted to X with Maxwell Dorn, tagged directly in the caption. The first hour was slow. A few hundred views. The expected comments about airlines being terrible customer service being dead, the general background noise of internet outrage with no particular target. By 8 a.m., the algorithm had found it. The video was 7 minutes and 14 seconds long. It was clear high definition and had audio so crisp that every word Troy Callahan and Captain Harmon said was perfectly audible. It showed a calm, articulate woman sitting in a seat she had paid for, speaking with measured precision, being physically blocked by a flight attendant and threatened with federal no-fly registry status by a captain who had not even attempted to verify her ticket on the aircraft's own computer system. By 9 a.m., it was trending in Chicago. By 10 a.m., it was the top trend in the United States. The hashtag Meridian Sky Exposed was climbing. Felix Reyes, still on his original flight to New York, landed at JFK and posted his own footage with the caption, "I was there." Here is what actually happened. His channel gained 200,000 subscribers in the following 4 hours. Senator Patricia Bridges of Illinois posted from her official account, "I am calling for an immediate Senate inquiry into the misuse of no-fly list authority by commercial aviation personnel. This video is deeply disturbing." Naomi read the senator's post, set her phone face down on the table, picked up her coffee. Time to introduce herself properly. The executive suite at Meridian Sky Airlines occupied the 34th floor of a glass tower in the uptown Dallas business district, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city that had been designed specifically to make the people working inside feel like they were above everything that happened below. Maxwell Dorn sat at his mahogany desk at 8:45 a.m., reading the Pinnacle Group acquisition closing documents for the 4th time. He was 56 years old, silver at the temples, wearing a suit that had cost more than most of his cabin crew made in a month, and nursing a double espresso that had gone cold. He had not noticed it was cold. The numbers looked good. The synergies were excellent. 6 days from now, he would be standing in a Chicago ballroom, shaking James Rutherford's hand in front of 100 cameras, and the slide that described him as the visionary who had saved a legacy airline from extinction would be playing on a 60-foot screen behind him. He had worked for this for 3 years. He had borrowed against everything to make it happen. It was going to happen. His office door burst open without a knock. Dorn did not look up. "Sarah." I said no interruptions before the 10 o'clock call. The woman in the doorway was Rachel Moss, 39, head of corporate communications. Her hair, usually a controlled copper wave, had the mildly disheveled quality of someone who had been running their hands through it since arriving at the office. She was holding a tablet in front of her with both hands at arm's length, as if she was not sure she wanted it to be closer to her body. "Maxwell," she said, "you need to stop what you are doing and look at this screen." He looked up. Something in her face, not panic exactly, but the particular state just before panic, made him set his pen down. He looked at the tablet. Rachel pressed play. Dorn watched the video. He watched Troy Callahan standing over a seated woman. He watched the manifest confrontation. He heard Captain Harmon's voice, clear as anything on a recording that apparently had been running for 7 minutes before the woman even stood up, saying the words, "You will never board a commercial aircraft again." The woman in the video was composed in a way that Dorn found immediately unsettling. She was not crying. She was not shouting. She was not doing any of the things that made these situations manageable. She was sitting perfectly still and speaking in complete, regulated sentences as if she were in a deposition instead of an airplane. "Who is she?" he asked. "The manifest has her as N. Graves. First class. Full fare purchase. No frequent flyer number attached, which is unusual for a first-class regular." Dorn waved a hand. "Fine. So we have a captain who overstepped. Put Harmon on administrative leave today, pending investigation. Issue a statement. Meridian Sky values every passenger. We are committed to a respectful and inclusive travel experience. We are reviewing the incident thoroughly. You know the language. Put a number together and get her in a room. 75,000. Close this before lunch." Rachel's mouth pressed into a thin line. She swiped on the tablet and turned the screen around again. This time it showed a graph, a very specific graph, a line tracking upward from bottom left to top right with the clean, merciless slope of a wildfire. "It is sitting at 4.2 million views," she said. "It has been live for 4 hours." Dorn stood up. He walked to the window, looked down at Dallas. He had a specific way of looking at things from this window. The distance, the angle, the sense of altitude. That usually restored his sense of proportion. Everything looked smaller from up here. Problems included. It was not working this morning. "The news cycle is 24 hours, he said. "By tomorrow they are talking about something else. Put together the statement. Make the offer. Go to 100 if you need to. Just get it done." Rachel set the tablet on his desk instead of taking it with her. "There is one more thing." She tapped the screen. "Senator Bridges is calling for a Senate inquiry into the no-fly list. We have 12 journalists who have requested comment," and she paused. "James Rutherford's assistant called our investor relations line 30 minutes ago, asking if there was anything Pinnacle should be aware of regarding the social media situation." Dorn turned from the window very slowly. "Find out who she is," he said. "Not her name. Who she is. Where she works. What she does. I want her background on my desk in an hour, and double the offer. 150,000. Full media silence, public statement from her saying the crew acted professionally, and she misunderstood the situation. Get it done." Rachel left without another word. Dorn stood at the window for another 30 seconds. The city was the same as it always was, but the feeling in his stomach was new. He had built this merger on the premise that nothing would go wrong in the final week. He had told Rutherford it was airtight. He had said those exact words, airtight. He picked up his espresso. It was cold. He drank it anyway. 3 floors below him, and 2,000 miles north in the United Club Lounge at O'Hare, Naomi Graves opened her LinkedIn profile. She read it over once. Senior partner Graves and Holloway, LLP. Corporate liability. Distressed asset acquisition. J.D. Harvard Law. 17 years in practice. 1,700 connections, including the CFOs of 9 Fortune 500 companies, 4 federal judges, 2 former SEC commissioners, and the CEO of Pinnacle Group Aviation. That last one was important. She began typing. To Meridian Sky Airlines and CEO Maxwell Dorn. This morning, your communications team issued a statement describing what was done to me aboard Flight 318 as an inconvenience. You stated that you are investigating whether protocol was followed. Let me save you the considerable legal fees you are about to incur. I am the woman in the video. My name is Dr. Naomi Graves. I am a senior partner at Graves and Holloway, LLP, where I specialize in corporate liability, civil rights litigation, and distressed asset acquisition. I have practiced law for 17 years. I have never lost a case involving unlawful passenger removal. What your crew did yesterday was not a protocol question. It was a violation of federal aviation passenger protection law. It was a breach of your contract of carriage. And the no-fly list threat issued by Captain Douglas Harmon constitutes an attempt to weaponize federal security infrastructure to suppress a legitimate discrimination complaint. I do not want a voucher. I do not want a settlement. I do not want a PR apology. I want your complete aircraft maintenance logs for the past 5 years. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to produce them voluntarily. If they are not produced, I will begin releasing the findings I have already compiled. Findings that concern not only the conduct of your employees, but the airworthiness of your fleet and the accuracy of your regulatory filings. The clock is running. Dr. Naomi Graves. She hit post. Within 40 seconds, the post was being shared by her network. Lawyers, bankers, hedge fund managers, former federal regulators, journalists who covered corporate accountability. The business world, which had been watching the viral video with the engaged detachment of spectators, suddenly sat forward. Because this was different. This was not a passenger venting online. This was a corporate litigator with 17 years of wins and a Harvard law degree announcing in precise professional language that she knew exactly what she was looking at. And she was coming for it. In Dallas, Maxwell Dorn's phone rang. The caller ID read, James Rutherford. Pinnacle Group Aviation. Maxwell picked up. Maxwell Rutherford said, "Who is Naomi Graves, and why is she publicly threatening to audit your maintenance records? It is completely under control, James." "It is not under control." Rutherford's voice was the temperature of ice water. "I am looking at her LinkedIn post right now. She is alleging airworthiness violations. If she has anything, if she can substantiate a single line of that, the deal is dead, and I will pursue breach of non-disclosure against you personally." The line went quiet for a moment. "Handle this," Maxwell Rutherford said. "Today." The call ended. Dorn set the phone down on his desk and looked at the stock ticker scrolling across the wall screen his assistant updated in real time. MSA $37.40. It had been $41.20 when the market opened. He looked at the number for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called his general counsel. "Get Gerald Voss," he said, "and get me Marcus Doyle. Tell them to find Dr. Naomi Graves and close this, whatever it takes." Naomi had checked into the O'Hare Marriott the previous evening, not because she could not have gone home, but because she had learned something important over 17 years of corporate litigation. The best place to fight is neutral ground. Not your office. Not their office. A room that belongs to no one, and therefore gives the advantage to whoever is better prepared. She was always better prepared. She had showered, eaten something she did not taste, and slept for 4 hours, which was in a crisis more than adequate. She was up at 5 a.m., working. By 9 a.m., when the post went live and the market started moving, she was dressed. Not in the hoodie. Not in the sneakers. A tailored silk blouse in off-white. Black slacks with a clean break at the ankle. Low heels. The Rolex fully visible on her left wrist this time. Her hair pulled back with the kind of precision that communicates I chose this deliberately. She sat in the high-backed chair facing the door and waited. In her earpiece, Sienna's voice came through at 8:13 a.m. "They are in the lobby. 2 of them. Gerald Voss, Meridian Sky's general counsel, and Marcus Doyle, private security and more recently corporate crisis management. Ex-government, very expensive, very accustomed to making problems go away." They are not carrying settlement documents. They are carrying pressure. Naomi said, "Let them up." "Are you sure you do not want me patched in?" "No. If you are in the room, it looks like a negotiation. If I am alone, it looks like what it actually is." She removed the earpiece and set it on the table beside her laptop. She looked at the door. She looked at the maintenance log Sienna had compiled overnight displayed in clean columns on the left monitor. She looked at the recording app running silently on her phone. 40 seconds later, there was a heavy knock. "It's open," Naomi said without standing. The door swung inward. Gerald Voss entered first, a small, narrow man in a suit that was slightly too large, as if the stress of the past 24 hours had shaved something off him physically. Behind him came Marcus Doyle, who was broad-shouldered and deliberate, and whose eyes swept the room from left to right before they landed on Naomi in the way that security professionals' eyes always do, checking for cameras, first exits, second threats, third. He found no cameras. He found no visible exits except the one he had entered through. And the only threat in the room was sitting in a chair looking at him with an expression of polite, absolute patience. "Dr. Graves." Voss cleared his throat. "I am Gerald Voss, General Counsel for Meridian Sky Airlines. This is my associate, Mr. Doyle. We appreciate you making time." Naomi gestured toward the sofa across from her. "I did not order room service, gentlemen. But since you are here, you have 40 minutes before my deadline expires." Voss did not sit. He set his briefcase on the coffee table and clicked both latches open in quick succession. He removed a single document, thick-tabbed, bound with a blue cover sheet, and a folded check. He placed them both on the table and pushed them toward Naomi with the tips of his fingers. Meridian Sky. Airlines formally acknowledges that certain members of the crew on Flight 318 acted with excessive zeal in the application of standard security protocols. He had clearly rehearsed this phrasing. "We deeply regret any distress this may have caused you. In recognition of that, we are prepared to offer a settlement of $600,000. This is accompanied by a non-disclosure agreement which would require you to delete all recordings in your possession, refrain from making any further public statements about this incident, and issue a brief clarifying post stating that the situation arose from a misunderstanding and that all parties behaved professionally." He stopped speaking. The room was very quiet. Naomi looked at the check. She looked at the document. She looked at Voss. She looked at Doyle. Then she looked back at Voss. "You want me to take $600,000, she said to publicly lie. Doyle stepped forward. His voice was lower, quieter, and carried the specific weight of a man who had used it to end difficult conversations before. "Dr. Graves, we have done our research on you. We know about the Whitmore Group acquisition. We know about the Hartfield dissolution strategy. We are prepared, if necessary, to characterize this entire incident as a calculated effort to manufacture a public event that would allow you to take a short position against Meridian Sky's stock. We can ensure that characterization reaches every financial press outlet and regulatory body in the country. We can tie you up in defamation and securities litigation for a decade. Your practice will not survive it intact." He paused, gave her a moment to feel the shape of that. Or he said, "You can take the check. Walk away, and your reputation stays exactly what it is." Naomi sat with that for 3 seconds. Then she stood up. She walked to the coffee table. She picked up the check with one hand. She held it up to the light from the window the way jewelers hold things they are evaluating. $600,000, she said quietly. That is approximately what Maxwell Dorn spent on interior cabin renovation costs he reclassified as safety upgrades to hide maintenance deferrals before the Pinnacle due diligence window. She tore the check in half. Then she folded the halves together and tore them again. She opened her hand and let the 4 pieces drift down to the carpet between them. Voss's face twitched. "Dr. Graves," he began. "Gerald," she said, using his first name with the calm authority of someone who had not needed permission to do so. "You looked into my background, but you stopped at the surface. You found the deals I have done and decided I was someone who trades in leverage. You were right about that. Where you were wrong was assuming I was leveraging this situation for money." She turned to her laptop. She rotated it toward them. On the screen was a spreadsheet. It was not a financial projection. It was a maintenance log. Column after column of tail numbers, flight hours, scheduled inspection dates, actual inspection dates, and a color-coded system that showed in immediately legible red where the numbers did not match what they should. "This," she said, "is the engine maintenance record for your Boeing 737 fleet, specifically the CFM56 engine series on tail numbers MSA7 through MSA16. Federal aviation regulations require a full engine overhaul cycle to be completed at a threshold of 25,000 flight hours. Your records show 8 aircraft operating at between 27 and 29,000 hours without completed overhauls. You reclassified the inspection costs as long-term capital improvements in 3 consecutive quarterly filings. The planes have continued in commercial service." Voss had gone completely still. "Where did you get that?" he said. It was not quite a question. "It does not matter where I got it," Naomi said. "What matters is what it represents. Flying those aircraft is a federal crime. It is reckless endangerment of commercial passengers. And the reclassification of mandatory safety costs is securities fraud. Those are not civil matters, Gerald. Those are criminal ones." She checked her watch. It was 8:52 a.m. "You have 8 minutes before my deadline," she said. "I would use them to leave my room." Doyle took a step forward. 1 step. He stopped. He was good at reading situations. That was what he was paid for. And what he was reading in this room, in this woman's face, was something he did not encounter often in this work. She was not afraid of him. Not at a performance level, not at a physiological level. She was not suppressing fear and calling it composure. She was genuinely fundamentally unafraid. Because she had already decided what happened next, and his presence in the room was not a variable in that decision. "We can increase the offer," Voss said. He was sweating now, finely and visibly at his hairline. 1.2 million. We can have the funds transferred by close of business today." Naomi walked to the suite door. She opened it, held it open with one hand, and looked at them both without hostility, without satisfaction, without heat of any kind. "My price," she said, "is Maxwell Dorn's resignation and a full disclosure to the FAA and to the Pinnacle Group Board. Since you cannot deliver that in 7 minutes, I suggest you spend those minutes in the elevator." Doyle looked at her for a long moment. He was calculating something. She could see it. He was deciding whether there was a version of this situation where force or the suggestion of force changed the outcome. He decided there was not. "Let's go, Gerald," he said. They walked out. Naomi watched them reach the elevator bank. Then she closed the door. She leaned against it. Her heart was moving at twice its resting rate, the way it always did after something that required full deployment of everything she had. She breathed slowly through her nose. 1 breath. 2. She stood up straight, walked to her desk. It was 8:59 a.m. She looked at her phone, opened the message thread with Sienna. She typed 2 words, "Burn it down." She looked at the clock, watched the second hand complete its final circuit. 9 a.m. She hit send. The email left Naomi's encrypted server at 9 a.m. sharp. It did not go to a general inbox. It went to the personal email addresses of 4 senior investigators at the Federal Aviation Administration's Office of Safety, individually named with subject lines that contained specific tail numbers and specific flight dates. It went to the Securities and Exchange Commission's Enforcement Division, and it went personally and directly to James Rutherford, CEO of Pinnacle Group Aviation, with a cover note that read, "Before you close Wednesday's vote, you should know what you are buying." The email contained 2.9 gigabytes of data, maintenance logs, internal memos, altered inspection records, and a file of whistleblower testimony that Sienna had compiled from former Meridian Sky maintenance contractors who had separately reached out to the Justice Air tip line after the video went viral overnight. Naomi sat back in her chair. She looked out the window at the runway. She did not feel triumphant. She felt the way she always felt at this moment in a case, when the lever had been pulled and the machinery was in motion, and there was nothing left to do but watch the structure respond to the forces she had applied. It was not a warm feeling. It was a cold, precise one. At 9:30 a.m., the FAA issued a public announcement of an emergency unplanned audit of Meridian Sky Airlines' Boeing 737 operational fleet. Pending the results of the audit, all commercial flights operated by MSA series aircraft were immediately suspended. At 9:32 a.m., the Meridian Sky stock price moved. MSA had opened the day at $37.40, already down from its previous close after the social media fallout. The FAA announcement hit the market the way a stone hits glass. Not gradually, not in stages, but all at once. MSA dropped to $31.10 in 4 minutes. On her laptop screen, Naomi watched the red line move. She had invested $2.8 million in put options the previous morning, contracts that paid out as the stock fell. Every dollar the share price dropped multiplied her position. She watched without speaking. In Dallas, the atmosphere in the Meridian Sky executive suite had passed through shock, moved through crisis, and arrived somewhere that had no clean name. A state of pure institutional disintegration. Maxwell Dorn was standing at his desk with his jacket-off tie, loosened phone in hand, cycling through calls from investors, lawyers, board members, and journalists who had somehow gotten his direct line. "It is a fabricated attack," he said over and over. "She manufactured a grievance to tank our stock. We are filing defamation litigation today. This is a coordinated scheme." The market did not care what he said. The market had seen the FAA announcement. The market had seen Naomi's LinkedIn post. The market had done the arithmetic that investors always do when regulatory exposure meets financial pressure and management credibility collapses simultaneously. MSA $24.80. Dorn's margin call came at 10:15 a.m. His broker contacted him first by call, then by automated notification. The share price had fallen below the collateral threshold on his leveraged personal investment positions. Immediate additional funds were required, or his assets would be liquidated to cover the exposure. He did not have the additional funds. He had moved everything into the positions backing the merger. There was nothing liquid left. In a span of less than 90 minutes, his Scottsdale property, his lake house, and the investment portfolio he had built over 30 years moved from assets to liabilities. Desperate and without options, Dorn did what failing executives almost always do. He found someone smaller than himself to throw. At 11 a.m., Meridian Sky Airlines issued a press release. Meridian Sky Airlines is appalled by the behavior exhibited by Captain Douglas Harmon and flight attendant Troy Callahan aboard Flight 318. Their actions were unauthorized, contrary to company policy, and do not reflect the values of this organization. Effective immediately, both individuals have been terminated. We are cooperating fully with all regulatory inquiries. The release made no mention of maintenance logs. It made no mention of Maxwell Dorn. It was written in the passive voice and structured to transfer blame downward while protecting the floor above. In her hotel room, Naomi read it. She set her phone down on the table. Predictable, she said quietly. To no one. At the same moment that Dorn was trying to save himself with a press release, James Rutherford's communications team was composing a different kind of statement. At 1:30 p.m., Pinnacle Group Aviation released the following. In light of significant and material revelations concerning the safety compliance record and financial reporting practices of Meridian Sky Airlines Pinnacle Group Aviation, is formally terminating the proposed merger agreement. We are simultaneously initiating legal proceedings against Meridian Sky for breach of material disclosure obligations. The statement was 8 sentences long. It killed a $2.8 billion deal in the time it took to read it. MSA $9.40. Naomi closed her position. She sat back in her chair and looked at the final number on her screen for a long moment. She had invested $2,800,000. The position had returned $38 million in change. She did not celebrate. She did not call anyone. She sat quietly for several minutes in a hotel room overlooking an airport, looking at a number on a screen, thinking about what it represented, not its size, but its source. It was money built on the certainty that a company willing to threaten a black woman over a seat was the same company willing to cut corners on safety inspection records to protect a merger. It was money built on the knowledge that one kind of disregard almost always travels with other kinds. She had been right. She usually was. Then she picked up her phone and called the office manager at the Graves Scholarship Fund, a scholarship she had funded quietly for 5 years, one she had never spoken about publicly, which sent first-generation black law students to Harvard, Georgetown, and Yale. Increase the annual allocation by 40%, she said, starting this cycle, and make sure the selection committee knows we are expanding eligibility to include students from state schools who would not traditionally make it to the consideration stage. She hung up, picked up her coffee. Maxwell Dorn called 11 minutes later from a number she did not recognize. She answered. His voice was unrecognizable, compressed, fraying somewhere between rage and collapse. You have destroyed a legacy institution. You have put thousands of people out of work. You have taken a company that has been flying for 40 years and burned it to the ground for a personal grudge over a seat on an airplane. Do you feel nothing? Naomi listened to all of it without interrupting. When he was finished, she said, I did not destroy it, Maxwell. I turned on the lights. The rot was already there. You built it. Plank by plank, corner cut by corner cut. You were flying unsafe aircraft to protect a deal and calling it leadership. I just made sure the people who needed to know knew. You are finished, he said. His voice cracked on the last word. I will find a way to... I am recording this call, Naomi said. Whatever you were about to say, I would strongly advise you to save it for your legal team, which, given what is coming, you should probably call right now. She ended the call, blocked the number, set her phone face down on the table. Outside the window, the tarmac was the same as it had been all morning. The same ground crews, the same fuel trucks, the same organized movement of an airport keeping itself alive. But somewhere on the other side of the terminal, the Meridian Sky Gate was dark and quiet and unmanned, and the departure board above it read one word in flat white letters, canceled. Douglas Harmon sat in the living room of his house in Naperville in the same clothes he had put on that morning because it had not occurred to him to change them. The television was on. CNN. His face was on the screen beneath a headline that read, Rogue Pilot Blamed in Meridian Sky Collapse. The photograph they had used was from his pilot's license renewal 2 years ago. The same photograph that was now appearing on 6 news channels simultaneously, the same face that 24 hours ago had been the face of a captain on a 40-year career, and was now the face of a corporate scapegoat wearing 4 stripes, and an expression of absolute confidence that looked in the current context like the expression of someone who should have known better. His company portal access had been revoked at 11:03 a.m. He knew because he had tried to log in to access his flight schedule, and the screen had returned user account suspended. Contact HR for further information. He had contacted HR. HR had not responded. His union representative had called briefly to say they were reviewing the situation. His lawyer had called to say the same thing. Both calls had ended with the same essential message: this is going to take time, and the situation is not simple. His pension. 31 years of it. Built one flight at a time, one early morning, and one delayed evening at a time, accumulated across hundreds of thousands of miles, and 3 aircraft types, and 2 decades of certificates and performance reviews that were without exception rated excellent or above. Gone. Not legally concluded, not formally forfeited, but gone in the practical sense, in the sense of what he could access and when, and under what conditions, which was a more important kind of gone than the legal kind. Maxwell Dorn, who had called him personally on his private cell 14 months ago and said, "Douglas, I need you to keep the schedule moving. Whatever that takes, we cannot afford groundings before the Pinnacle window closes. Do you understand me?" Had issued a press release calling his behavior rogue and unauthorized. He sat with that word for a long time. Rogue. He thought about the woman in seat 1A. He thought about how she had stood up, how she had smoothed her hoodie and addressed the cabin without raising her voice, and how every syllable she said had been exactly right, legally and factually and morally, and how he had known it even then in that specific way that you know things you do not want to know. She had looked him in the eye as she left and said, "This is the worst professional decision you will ever make." He had thought she was bluffing. He stood up from the couch. He walked to his home office. In the bottom drawer of his desk, inside a metal fireproof box that he had bought during a period of his career when he had first started having the thoughts he was now thinking, was a journal. He had kept it for 10 years, not a diary. Harmon was not the diary type. It was more clinical than that. Dates, flight numbers, specific events, specific conversations. Every time operations management had pressured him to fly with an open maintenance flag. Every time a warning indicator had been manually cleared without the documented inspection. Every memo forwarded through unofficial channels from Maxwell Dorn's office emphasizing efficiency targets and containing the phrase "safety protocols should not impede operational continuity." He had kept it because he was a pilot, and pilots, the good ones, are trained to document. They are trained to understand that the difference between an accident and a tragedy is almost always the gap between what was recorded and what actually happened. He picked up the journal. He held it. Then he put it on the desk, opened his phone, and went to his recent airdrop history. The Justice Air tip line address was still there. He found the number attached to the email signature and dialed. It rang twice. A woman picked up. "Sienna speaking. My name is Douglas Harmon," he said. "I am the captain from Flight 318. I would like to speak with Dr. Graves." There was a pause, a click, then a different voice, controlled direct without performance. "Captain Harmon, I read the press release. They threw you in front of the train. They took everything he said. My record, the pension I built for 31 years. He used my flights, my decisions, my crew. And the second it cost him something, he called me rogue." She did not fill the silence with sympathy. That was, he found, a relief. "I know," she said. "Maxwell Dorn does not operate on loyalty. He operates on proximity to survival. You were useful until you became a liability, and then you became a scapegoat. That is the model. I have a journal," he said. He paused, organizing it in his head so it came out cleanly. 10 years of entries. Specific dates, specific flight numbers, specific conversations with Dorn and his operations team, in which I was directly told to fly aircraft with open safety flags. I have emails he sent through unofficial channels. I documented them within 24 hours of receiving them. I did it because I knew somewhere that if something ever went wrong, I needed there to be a record that the pressure came from above me. The silence on the other end was different now. That turns this from regulatory negligence into deliberate criminal conspiracy, Naomi said. That is a different category of charge with a different set of consequences. Yes, he said. I know. Why give it to me? She asked. And her voice was genuinely curious, not strategic. You understand that I am the reason your name is on that headline. I exposed the incident that started this. Harmon looked at his 4-stripe shoulder boards hanging on the hook beside his desk where they always hung at the end of a trip. You did not put my name on that headline, he said. I put my own name there the moment I walked out of that cockpit and chose his story over what I could see with my own eyes. Dorn put it there when he decided I was more useful as a villain than as an employee. You just turned on the lights, same as you said. But Dorn is the one who built this, and if I am going down, it will not be alone. Do you want the journal? Naomi said. Or do you not? Send whoever you need to send, he said. I will be here. She arranged for a courier within 20 minutes. The journal was scanned in full at Sienna's secure facility, and the encrypted files were sent simultaneously to the FBI field office in Chicago, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and the SEC's Criminal Enforcement Division. Sienna called Naomi immediately after confirming transmission. This changes the criminal exposure significantly, she said. Depending on what the journal contains in detail, you are looking at conspiracy to defraud wire fraud, securities fraud, and potentially endangerment charges. He is looking at federal prison, Naomi said. Yes, Sienna confirmed. Serious federal prison. Naomi was quiet for a moment. Good, she said. Then it is done. What followed happened quickly. That is what people who have never watched a large institution collapse tend to forget. It does not crumble slowly, stone by stone, over months and years. Once the foundational pressure reaches a certain threshold, the whole structure drops at once. It takes minutes, sometimes less. On Tuesday, the FAA's emergency audit team completed their initial inspection of the Meridian Sky fleet. Their preliminary findings confirmed what Naomi's maintenance logs had shown. 8 aircraft had been operating significantly beyond their mandatory overhaul thresholds. The documentation supporting their continued airworthiness had been falsified. The FAA issued a full operational suspension of all Meridian Sky Boeing 737 flights, pending comprehensive review. The departure boards at 31 airports across the country began updating simultaneously. Canceled, canceled, canceled. The word appeared gate by gate, city by city, the digital equivalent of a building losing its windows floor by floor. 11,000 passengers had itineraries affected in the first 3 hours alone. Families stranded at gates, business travelers missing connections, people who had nothing to do with any of this finding themselves standing at counters being handed printed apologies that said nothing about what had actually happened. Naomi saw the news alert on her phone. She set it face down without reading the full article. She did not need to. On Wednesday, the Securities and Exchange Commission suspended trading of Meridian Sky Airline stock. The final recorded price before suspension was $4.10 per share. 48 hours earlier, it had been $41.20. On Thursday, the Meridian Sky Board of Directors convened an emergency session. It lasted less than 2 hours. Maxwell Dorn was voted out by unanimous decision, which meant that even the board members he had personally appointed in the past 3 years had calculated the arithmetic and found that standing next to him at this particular moment cost more than the alternative. Dorn received the notification by email because no one on the board was willing to make the call personally. On Friday morning, Meridian Sky Airlines filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Not reorganization, not restructuring, but full liquidation. 41 years of operations, a fleet of aircraft, gate access at 6 major hub airports, brand identity frequent flyer databases, employee contracts, all of it converted in the language of federal bankruptcy court into assets to be auctioned for the benefit of creditors. The announcement landed while Naomi was finishing her second cup of coffee in the same hotel suite she had stayed in all week. She was flying home that afternoon. She had already packed. She read the bankruptcy filing headline. She finished her coffee. She rinsed the cup. That afternoon, federal agents arrested Maxwell Dorn at his Scottsdale residence. The charges included securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the United States, specifically to deceive federal regulators about the operational safety of commercial aircraft. The conspiracy charge was the most serious, and it carried the most weight, and it existed almost entirely because of what Douglas Harmon had written in a fireproof box in his desk drawer over 10 years of flights. A camera crew had been tipped off about the timing. Photographs of Dorn in handcuffs appeared on the front page of the Wall Street Journal's online edition within the hour. He was wearing slacks and a dress shirt, no jacket. His silver hair was uncombed. He did not look at the cameras. Naomi saw the photograph. She looked at it for a long moment without speaking. There was no satisfaction in it. She had learned early in her career that the conclusion of a case never felt the way people expected it to feel. It felt like paperwork completing. It felt like a door closing. It felt like something that needed to be done was done. She turned away from her laptop and called Sienna. "Carmen Vidal," she said when Sienna picked up. "Where does she land?" Carmen Vidal had 2 days after the bankruptcy announcement submitted a full written testimony to both the FAA and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Her testimony described the unwritten crew behavior protocol, a visual checklist she had received in modified form during her original Meridian Sky training and had seen applied selectively and repeatedly during her 6 years with the airline. She described it plainly if a passenger's appearance did not match a flight attendant's expectation for their cabin class. The protocol encouraged heightened scrutiny, re-verification of documents, and escalated supervisor involvement. It was not written down anywhere official, but it was real. And Carmen Vidal, who had stood at the galley entrance on Flight 318 and chosen not to step forward, had spent 4 days deciding that the time for not stepping forward was finished. "She does not have a job to go back to," Sienna said. "The airline does not exist. See if she needs a reference," Naomi said, "and make sure the EEOC has everything they need from our end to support her testimony." She took a risk. "That should mean something." "It will," Sienna said. "Also, Felix Reyes' video hit 14 million views this morning." Naomi paused. He turned off the monetization. First thing he did after posting. The description links to 2 civil aviation accountability organizations. He has been fielding interview requests all week and declining all of them. "Good," she said. "He was paying attention," Naomi said. "That is what matters. Most people look away." He did not. She thought about Arthur Blythe in Seat 1B, who had started recording when her airdrop reached him and had submitted his footage to the Justice Air tip line without being asked again. She thought about Sandra Good, who had said what needed to be said in Seat 2A when she did not have to. Then there was the letter. It had arrived at the Graves and Holloway office on Thursday, handwritten with a Chicago return address. Sandra Good. It turned out had looked up the firm after the story broke. The letter was not long. "I do not know if you remember me. I was in Seat 2A on Flight 318. I said that what they did to you was wrong. I meant it. But I have been thinking all week about the fact that I said it to the air behind you after you were already walking away. I should have said it directly to the crew when it would have cost me something to say it. I am sorry I waited. You deserved more people who did not wait. The letter was signed with her name and nothing else. Nothing. Naomi had read it twice. She had folded it carefully. She had placed it in the drawer of her desk at the Holloway office beside a framed photograph of her parents on her law school graduation day. A drawer she did not open for professional reasons, only personal ones. Not because it solved anything, not because it closed anything, but because it was real. Because it was honest. Because Sandra Good had taken the time to understand the difference between speaking too late and not speaking at all, and had chosen to say so. And in a week that had been built almost entirely of people choosing to look away or choosing to look out for themselves, that small and particular honesty felt worth keeping. 14 days after flight, 318 pushed back from gate E14. Without her, Naomi Graves drove to Teterboro Airport in northern New Jersey, under a sky that was the particular blue that only appears after a long rain. Sharp, unfiltered, merciless in its clarity. She was not carrying a boarding pass. She was carrying her duffel. The same one. Worn leather Italian expensive to someone who looked closely and invisible to someone who did not. She had carried it on every work trip for 6 years. She did not plan to change that. A black SUV met her at the private terminal entrance and brought her out to the tarmac. The Gulfstream G550 was parked in its usual position, clean and quiet in the morning light, the firm's logo small and tasteful on the tail. The ground crew was already done with the pre-flight. The door was open. She had flown commercial that morning, technically. She had booked the first available United flight from Chicago to Teterboro, paid full first-class fare, seated herself in row 1 without incident, and landed without anyone saying a word to her about the seat she was sitting in. It was unremarkable. It was boring. It was exactly how it was always supposed to go. She had taken the flight for herself, not for any strategic reason. She wanted to know how it felt to walk through a gate as herself fully without the weight of what had happened the last time. She wanted the airport to just be an airport. And it had been. And that ordinary, unremarkable thing had been quietly extraordinary in a way she did not yet have words for. She crossed the tarmac with her duffel over one shoulder, the morning air cool and carrying the smell of jet fuel and something cleaner underneath it. A few gulls turned circles overhead. The engine of a departing regional jet climbed past and faded. She reached the foot of the Gulfstream stairs. Standing in the open doorway at the top of the steps was the pilot. She was 29 years old with close-cropped natural hair and 4 stripes on each shoulder board that she wore with the kind of ease that comes not from confidence alone but from having earned it thoroughly. Her smile when she saw Naomi was the completely unperformed smile of someone who is simply glad to be where she is. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Graves," she said. "I am Captain Alicia Moore. We are ready whenever you are." Naomi stopped on the second step. She looked at Captain Moore. She looked at the 4 stripes. She looked at the expression on her face. The particular combination of professional pride and genuine warmth that you only see in people who have found the exact thing they were supposed to be doing. And something moved through Naomi that she had not expected. Not emotion, exactly, or not only emotion. It was more structural than that. It was the feeling of a line drawing itself between 2 points that had seemed unconnected. A senior partner's doorway. A memo left on a desk without a word. A decision made on a train ride home about a firm that did not exist yet. A woman who built it anyway, piece by piece from the fuel of 14 years of rooms that tried to tell her she did not belong in them. And here at the top of a staircase, a young black woman in 4 stripes asking if they were ready. They were always ready. The world had just taken some time to arrange itself properly. Captain Moore, Naomi said. Her voice was warmer than usual. "How long have you held your license?" 4 years, ma'am. Instrument rated type certified for this aircraft 18 months ago. Naomi nodded slowly. "You will have 40 more," she said. "At least." She climbed the remaining steps and walked into the cabin. The interior was quiet. Leather seats muted, lighting the particular hush of a space designed for work and rest in equal measure. Naomi walked to the seat at the front, the one she always sat in. She set her duffel in the overhead compartment. She sat down. Seat 1A. Always seat 1A. She buckled the seatbelt and leaned her head back for a moment, eyes open, looking at the ceiling of the aircraft. She thought about Dana Pruitt at gate E14 and the arm she had extended without looking at the boarding pass. She thought about Troy Callahan standing with his arms spread wide in the first-class aisle, making a wall of himself between a woman and a seat she had paid for. She thought about Douglas Harmon and the words he had said with the absolute certainty of a man who believed his power was permanent. "You will never board a commercial aircraft again." She looked out the window. On the far side of the airport, barely visible through the fence line, a ground vehicle was moving in slow circles around a wide, empty area of tarmac. There were no aircraft parked there, no ground crews, no luggage carts, just the vehicle moving in its slow circles on concrete that had nothing left to service. Somewhere in 31 airports across the country, Meridian sky gates sat dark and unmanned. Departure boards showed nothing above them. The equipment had been reclaimed by the airport. The staff had filed unemployment claims. The brand that had printed its name on tickets and boarding passes and tray tables for 4 decades had been reduced to a chapter in a bankruptcy court filing. She thought about what she had said to Maxwell Dorn on the phone. "I did not destroy it. I turned on the lights. The rot was already there." She meant it. She had not created the maintenance fraud. She had not created the culture that trained flight attendants to use appearance as a security indicator. She had not built the institutional blindness that dismissed 3 complaints against Douglas Harmon in 4 years without consequence. She had found all of it already in place, running quietly behind the public face of a company that printed the words "commitment" and "excellence" and "safety" on the walls of its corporate headquarters. She had just made sure that the people who needed to see it saw it. The engines came to life beneath her, not the shuddering startup of something straining, but the smooth, full-throated power of machinery in perfect working order, maintained to the exact standard that the law required and common decency demanded. The door sealed. The world went quiet. "Let's fly," Naomi said. To no one. To herself. To the 27-year-old who had stood in a doorway and been asked for someone else. The Gulf Stream began to move. It turned onto the taxiway with unhurried precision, the nose lifting to face the long gray ribbon of the runway ahead. Through the oval window, Naomi watched Teterboro Airport arrange itself into the geometry it becomes when you are about to leave it. The terminals shrinking, the control tower growing briefly taller before that too began to fall away. The aircraft gathered speed. The ground fell. And Naomi Graves, who had been told by a man in 4 stripes that she would never board a commercial aircraft again, lifted off the ground and looked forward at the sky that opened ahead of her, vast and blue and indifferent to the opinions of anyone who had ever tried to put a ceiling on it. She did not look down. She never did. The sky had always belonged to anyone willing to claim it. She had simply reminded a few people of that fact, and now she was going home. If this story moved you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me if you would have spoken up in that cabin. Tell me if you have ever been in a room where someone decided who you were before you opened your mouth. Your stories matter, and this community is built on them. If you believe that dignity should never have to fight this hard to be respected, please hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that quiet strength is still strength. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now. because the stories we tell here do not end when the video does. They stay with you. And so does the reminder that the most powerful person in any room is not always the loudest one. Sometimes it is the one who already knows how the story ends. Thank you for watching. Thank you for not looking away. The next story is coming, and you will not want to miss it.